What if the reason you feel so exhausted and just, angry scrolling through your feed every day is because you are fundamentally misunderstanding the laws of physics?
I mean, it sounds crazy, but it makes a lot of sense when you really get into it.
Right. So today's deep dive is exploring a pretty wild premise. I am your host, ready to jump in.
And I am your expert, glad to be here to help unpack this.
Awesome. So we are looking at this fascinating article today by Rabbi Shlomo Ezagui, and it's titled The Illusion of the Jungle, the Quantum Physics of Chassidic Oneness.
This is a great piece.
It really is. The mission for today's deep dive is to explore this startling convergence that the author highlights between, well, cutting-edge quantum mechanics and ancient Torah wisdom.
Yeah, two things you wouldn't necessarily put together immediately.
Right, exactly. He basically argues that our culture's whole addiction to conflict, the endless power struggles, the outrage algorithms, all of it.
The exhausting stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff that makes us feel like we live in this predatory jungle where the bigger animal just devours the smaller one. He says that stems from a foundational scientific error.
Right, a deeply ingrained error.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because reading this, it sounds like he's suggesting our entire society is acting like players in this hyper-competitive board game, completely unaware that the physical board itself is just an optical illusion.
That is a really great way to frame it, because if society is this optical illusion of a board game, the instruction manual we've been using to play it is basically classical physics.
Okay.
To understand why we treat the jungle as an absolute reality, the author points back to a scientific framework known as local realism.
Local realism.
Right, yeah. So for centuries, classical physics taught us that the universe operates essentially like a giant clockwork mechanism.
Like gears and springs and all that.
Exactly. Everything was viewed as this assemblage of separate, self-contained objects. So local realism means two distinct things. First, there's realism, which implies that physical properties exist independently of whether anyone is observing them.
So like the old tree falling in the forest makes a sound regardless of who is around to hear it.
Right, exactly. The tree falls, it makes a sound, period. And then second, there's the local part. This means influences cannot travel faster than the speed of light.
Okay.
Space is viewed as this vast, empty void that keeps everything physically apart from everything else.
So the universe is basically a cosmic billiard table.
Right.
The balls only affect each other if they physically smash into one another. Or, if one sets off a slow chain reaction that eventually reaches another one.
Yeah, like dominoes.
Right. But otherwise, they're just totally distinct, isolated entities.
Yes. And that scientific model of isolation, it inadvertently built our modern psychological model.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, think about it. When human beings began to view the fundamental nature of physical reality as fractured and separate, we naturally began to see ourselves as isolated, competing units in a hostile world.
Oh, I see.
The physics of separation inevitably creates the psychology of the jungle.
Because if I'm fundamentally separate from you, with this empty void between us, my survival might very well depend on outcompeting you or even dominating you.
Exactly. The steady diet of hostility we see today, it isn't just mindless entertainment. It is the logical endpoint of a Newtonian worldview.
A worldview of isolation.
Right. It leaves us feeling deeply alienated, just convinced the world is nothing but a collision of brute forces.
I mean, I hear that, but I'm struggling to make that leap, though.
How so?
Well, you can't just take the behavior of subatomic particles and, instantly map it onto human philosophy.
Fair point.
Even the greatest scientific minds didn't just accept this quantum weirdness when it was first introduced. Albert Einstein famously mocked the whole idea that particles could be entangled.
Oh, yeah, he hated it.
Right. Where measuring one particle instantaneously determines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. He called it spooky action at a distance.
Spooky action, yeah. Einstein's resistance makes perfect sense, though, when you realize that entanglement threatened to just completely tear up his entire billiard table universe.
It broke all the rules.
Exactly. So in 1935, Einstein, along with Boris Podolsky and Nathan Rosen, they published the EPR paper.
Right, the famous EPR paper.
Yeah, and they argued that quantum mechanics had to be missing something. They proposed the existence of what they called local hidden variables.
Local hidden variables, meaning like secret instructions tucked inside the particles from the very beginning.
Yes. Think of it like a pair of gloves separated into two boxes.
Okay, gloves.
Right. One box is sent to New York and the other box is sent to Tokyo.
Got it.
If you open the box in New York and you find a left glove, you instantaneously know that the box in Tokyo contains a right glove.
Sure.
But not because the gloves are somehow, communicating with each other faster than the speed of light.
Right. It's just because they were always a left and a right glove from the exact moment they were packed.
Exactly. So Einstein argued that particles worked the exact same way.
I see.
They had pre-existing hidden instructions that dictated their behavior. And this preserved the absolute independence of physical objects.
It keeps the realism and the local part intact.
Yes.
But on the other side of that debate was Niels Bohr.
Right.
And he was arguing something entirely different about how these particles actually exist before we look at them.
Yeah, Bohr asserted something that was completely counterintuitive to classical physics. He said physical properties do not actually have definite values until they are measured.
Wow.
So in his view, the particles weren't a left and right glove sitting patiently in their boxes.
It's more like, imagine a coin spinning in the air.
Yes, perfect.
While it's spinning, it's not heads or tails. It's just this blur of both possibilities, a state of total probability. And it only really decides to be heads or tails the second you slap it down on the table, which is the act of measurement. So Bohr was essentially saying the universe is full of spinning coins, not packed gloves.
That spinning coin metaphor captures the core of quantum indeterminacy perfectly. But you have to remember, for decades, this was just a philosophical stalemate.
Because how could you possibly test it?
Exactly. How do you prove whether a particle has hidden instructions or if it's a spinning coin of probability when you literally can't look at it without measuring?
Right. The second you look, it slaps the coin down on the table.
Right. So the turning point finally came in 1964 with an Irish physicist named John Stuart Bell.
Okay, John Stuart Bell.
He formalized this whole debate into a very rigorous mathematical framework, which we now know as Bell's inequality.
Okay.
Bell basically proved that if Einstein was right about hidden variables, if the particles were just gloves with preset instructions, there would be a strict mathematical cap on how often the behavior of two distant particles could correlate when measured in random, independent ways.
Okay, because if they are just following independent pre-written instructions,
Right.
they can only match up so many times by sheer coincidence.
Right.
But if Bohr was right, and they are actually these entangled spinning coins,
Then if quantum mechanics was right, the entangled particles would actually violate that mathematical limit.
oh wow.
They would show a degree of coordination that is literally impossible for two separate objects following independent instructions.
So did they test it?
Yes, beginning in the 1970s and continuing through modern precision experiments, physicists have run these exact tests, and Bell's inequality has been repeatedly and decisively violated.
Meaning the mathematical cap was broken.
Completely broken.
So the particles are coordinating in ways that prove they do not have hidden variables.
Exactly. The scientific conclusion is basically inescapable at this point. Local hidden variables do not exist. The universe is fundamentally non-local.
Okay, so if space doesn't actually separate us, and the universe isn't a bunch of distinct billiard balls separated by empty voids, what is actually filling the gaps?
Well, that's where the physics meets the mysticism.
Because reading Rabbi Ezagui's article,
Yeah.
it really sounds like modern physicists just kind of stumbled into the exact same realization that Chassidic mystics had, centuries ago.
Yeah.
When the source talks about the quantum vacuum or this invisible entangled field, is that what Hasidic teachings mean by ultimate truth?
What's really fascinating about Rabbi Ezagui's argument is how seamlessly he maps this non-local physics concept directly onto Torah wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Hasidic sages have taught for centuries that humanity's primary spiritual error is mistaking the surface level of reality for the ultimate truth.
Okay.
They call this surface level the Olam Hapirud, which literally translates to the world of division.
The world of division, so that's the jungle.
Yeah.
That's the optical illusion of the board game, where we think we are these isolated units just fighting each other for survival.
Exactly. And beneath that illusion of division is what they call Achdut Hashem, divine unity.
Achdut Hashem.
Right. The author references a foundational work called the Tanya, which was written by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi back in the late 18th century.
Okay.
The Tanya explains that God didn't just create the world once in the distant past, like a clockmaker who winds up a clock and just walks away.
Right.
Rather, the divine creative force is continuously speaking all of existence into being ex nihilo, which means out of nothing.
That is nothing.
And doing this every single millisecond.
Oh, so it's almost like the refresh rate on a computer monitor.
That's a great way to think of it.
Like, it looks perfectly solid and continuous to us as we sit here and watch a video, but the screen is actually being redrawn constantly, pixel by pixel, out of total blackness.
Yes, exactly. Beneath the physical veil of those pixels, everything in creation is sustained by a single, infinite divine light, which the text calls the Ein Sof.
Ein Sof, okay.
Because of this constant, unified recreation, the ultimate spiritual realization is Ein Od Milvado, which means there is nothing else besides him.
Wow. So the scientific discovery that physical separation is an illusion maps directly onto this Hasidic realization that all of existence is continuously united and sustained by a single, indivisible source.
You've got it. Space doesn't separate things at the deepest level because everything is an expression of the exact same unified field.
That is just wild to think
Yeah.
about. I see the structural parallel there,
Yeah.
but let's look at how this impacts the future, practically.
Sure.
Because if reality is deeply connected and constantly refreshing out of nothing like a monitor, how does that affect our seemingly inescapable fate?
What do you mean?
Well, the source brings up this stark, really visceral image from the Talmud, from Bereshit 10a, about a sharp sword resting upon a person's neck.
Oh, yes. The sharp sword.
In a classical cause-and-effect billiard ball world, that sword means doom is immediate.
Right.
Gravity works, physics works, the outcome is completely locked in.
Right.
How does quantum indeterminacy change that terrifying equation for the listener?
Well, it changes the equation by shifting us from a rigid universe to a fluid one. Classical physics is entirely deterministic. If you know the velocity and the mass of the sword, the outcome is written. Physical cause and effect completely dictate that your fate is sealed.
It's game over.
Exactly. But quantum indeterminacy reveals that the universe isn't a fixed machine doomed to a single predetermined trajectory.
Going back to our earlier metaphor, until the measurement actually occurs, the coin is still spinning.
Yes.
The possibilities remain entirely open.
They're open, they're dynamic, and they're fluid. So spiritually speaking, because the underlying reality is unified and continually renewed, because the frame of reality hasn't fully rendered yet, the future is never a faced, inescapable prison.
Wow.
The quote from Bereshit 10a says, "Even if a sharp sword rests upon a person's neck, one should never despair of divine mercy."
I mean, from a deterministic classical standpoint, that just sounds like naive wishful thinking.
Right,
The sword is falling. You're done.
right. But from a quantum and Torah standpoint, the author frames this as a statement about the actual mechanics of reality. Yeah. Through human agency, specifically through prayer, moral transformation, and teshuva, which means return or repentance, a person can reach into a dimension where true indeterminacy reigns.
Which means the trajectory of physical reality can literally shift before the next frame on the monitor renders.
Yes. When a person taps into that deeper unified source, they are accessing the fluid quantum state before the outcome is measured and locked in by the physical world.
That is incredibly empowering.
It really is. The surface world of conflict, that physical cause and effect that seems so absolute in the world of division, it's not the final authority.
So you are never fully locked into the doom that the cynical jungle mentality insists is inevitable.
Never.
So, okay, what does this all mean for daily life? How does knowing that the universe is a unified, constantly refreshing quantum field actually change how I treat the person cutting me off in traffic today?
Right, the practical application.
Yeah, or the person arguing with me in a comment section. It's one thing to marvel at subatomic particles being linked in a sterile lab, but human beings are a lot messier. We hold grudges, we have massive egos.
Oh, absolutely. The author anchors this cosmic concept into the daily reality of what's called Bein Adam Le Shavero, which basically means interpersonal relationships.
Okay.
If quantum physics demonstrates that two particles thousands of miles apart are actually part of a single indivisible system, human beings are linked on an even more profound level.
Right.
The source explains that every human being is created Be'aselem Elohim, which means in the divine image, we are animated by a soul, a neshama tehora, which is a pure spark of the divine.
Meaning, we all share a fundamental commonality with the exact same source.
Yes.
Which means harming someone else isn't just defeating a competitor in the jungle. It is actively inflicting a wound on a system that you are an integral part of.
Exactly.
It's literally like your left hand stabbing your right hand just to win a boxing match. The victory is completely delusional because you are only damaging yourself.
That's a perfect analogy. The delusion of being isolated islands is the sole root of the ego trip. It's the root of the urge to dominate and that whole dog-eat-dog view of life.
Yeah.
Once you realize the board game is an illusion, arrogance becomes mathematically and spiritually absurd. Why would you dominate an extension of yourself?
You wouldn't.
Exactly. The source mentions a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Chassidic movement. He taught that wherever a person's thoughts are, that is where the person is fully.
Wow. That carries incredible weight in a non-local universe.
Doesn't it?
Our inner states, our passing thoughts about our neighbors, they aren't just private, harmless little events trapped inside our skulls.
No, they carry real, immediate weight across the entire interconnected system. This is why the concept of Ahavat Israel, which means loving one's fellow as oneself, isn't just a pious moral suggestion to, just be a nice person.
Right, it's not just a polite request.
Exactly. It is an accurate reflection of physical and spiritual reality. Loving your neighbor as yourself makes logical sense because at the root of your souls, your neighbor is an extension of yourself.
Which brings us to perhaps the most empowering part of this entire synthesis, the observer effect.
Yes, the observer effect.
In quantum mechanics, the measurement paradox shows us that the observer is never just a passive bystander sitting back and watching the universe happen.
Right. To really understand the gravity of the observer effect, you have to look at the famous double-slit experiment in physics.
The double-slit experiment. Yeah.
Right. When you fire a subatomic particle, like an electron, at a barrier with two slits in it, it behaves like a wave of probabilities. It creates an interference pattern on the wall behind it. It essentially goes through both slits at the exact same time.
Because it's still a wave of possibility.
Exactly. But the moment you place a detector at the slits to observe which one it actually goes through, the wave function collapses.
Oh, wow.
It acts like a solid little bullet and only goes through one slit. The mere act of observation forces the fluid possibilities of the universe to collapse into a single concrete reality.
So the observer literally dictates how the physical system behaves just by looking at it.
Yes.
So how does Rabbi Ezagui apply this to our daily lives? How can the listener actively use their observer status today to fix the broken jungle we find ourselves in?
Well, the author brings in Maimonides to answer this.
Okay, Maimonides, one of the most prolific Torah scholars in history.
Right. He illustrates our profound moral responsibility in this interactive universe perfectly. Maimonides ruled that a person should constantly view the entire world as if it were perfectly evenly balanced between merit and fault.
A 50-50 split.
Exactly, a 50-50 split.
Like a quantum wave teetering right between possibilities.
Yes, because the observer engages with the system and collapses the wave of possibilities into reality. Your choice of how to act carries cosmic weight. Maimonides teaches that a single good deed, a single compassionate word, or even just a single refined thought is the measurement that tips the scales.
Just one thought.
Just one thought. It collapses the probabilities, tilting the individual and the entire world toward the side of merit, bringing healing to the entire system.
So by choosing to see the good and refusing to join that outrage algorithm we talked about earlier, we are actively drawing forth harmony from a field of infinite possibilities.
Right.
We aren't just reacting to the madness of society with fear and paralysis. We are literally tipping the scales of reality by how we choose to observe it and act within it.
The non-local universe actually requires our participation. When you infuse your daily interactions with compassion, you actively influence the field.
That is beautiful.
The text beautifully captures this ultimate purpose by closing with a vision from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 9.
What does it say?
It says, "The earth shall be full of the knowledge of God as the waters cover the sea."
Think about that. When you look at the ocean, you don't see the water and the ocean floor as two separate competing entities.
No.
The water covers the floor so completely that they become completely indistinguishable from each other.
Just as physical matter and spiritual light are fundamentally one.
Right.
The goal the author outlines is to let go of our obsession with the human jungle of conflict, awaken to the unbroken wholeness of creation, and recognize the immense power we hold as observers.
And by doing that, we fulfill our purpose.
Exactly. Transforming this world into a dwelling place for the divine, where unity reigns and peace just naturally follows.
We've spent centuries thinking scientific truth and divine wisdom were entirely separate fields. But it turns out they might just be describing the exact same unified reality using totally different vocabularies.
It certainly looks that way.
Before we wrap up today, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final provocative thought to just mull over, pushing this into totally new territory for you to explore on your own.
Let's hear it.
We've talked a lot about the illusion of space today. But if quantum entanglement proves that physical distance is an illusion, and our inner states carry real weight in this unified system. Does that mean we're also entangled across time?
Oh.
Think about it. When we perform a compassionate act today and collapse that wave function toward merit, are we not only tipping the balance of the present world, but perhaps literally entangled with the ancient sages who first envisioned it?
That's a profound idea.
It suggests their wisdom isn't just history to be studied in a book. It's a living, breathing part of our own quantum field right now. The board game, the jungle, the isolation, it's all an illusion. The connection we forge is truly the only thing that is real.